Welcome to the Gentleman's Guide to Gaming. We are here once again with another video on Curseborne. Why are we discussing Curseborne again? Well, there's obvious reasons. One of them is, as of time of recording, we have smashed through 400% of our funding target and already demolished the stretch goals that we set out for this campaign within the first week of funding. It is going absolutely great guns, superb, and I want to say thank you very much to everybody who has supported so far. One of the questions I've had asked repeatedly, even though there is I've made several videos on what you do in Curseborne, is what do I do in Curseborne? And I've narrowed it down to the basic idea of, well, give me an example plot. What is supposed to engage my characters in this game? And while I can provide you with broad strokes ideas of familial politicking and intrigue, mysteries that need to be solved, in supernatural encroachments from the outside that you need to beat back, and self-discovery and mastery of one's own curse, that clearly isn't what people are after. People want an example story. So let's give them one. Now, in traditional gentleman gamer fashion, I don't script these videos, never have, and I certainly don't edit them. So we are going to come up with a plot more or less on the fly. We're going to come up with some ideas spontaneously, and you're going to have to take my word for it that that's what we're doing. There is no paper there, or anywhere else for me to refer to. We are just going to come up with a story as we go. And it's, to be honest, I love doing that kind of thing. I love doing that for any RPG. It's the kind of thing that gets me in the mood for writing. It's when I can just visualize a plot. And so I want to take our Curseborne story in a Twin Peaks-y, X-Files-y direction, I think, for this one. And what we will go with is, and I always find this is the easiest kind of plot for anyone to run. It creates immediate engagement and abduction, or rather someone has gone missing. Whenever a character goes missing in a story, it immediately creates engagement because, especially if you tie that person to one of your player characters, they have an incentive to seek out where that individual has gone. They want the answers. Why have they disappeared? Where have they gone? Who has someone taken them? And if so, why? If they ran away, what drove them to do so? That kind of thing. And you can make it as kitchen sink mundane as you like, or as supernatural as you like. I think we are going to blend the two in this particular scenario. And indeed, we're not going to start with news that someone has gone missing. Rather, we are going to make our characters witnesses to someone going missing. So let's focus on one player character. This is something I like to do when I run games. I like each story to have a different protagonist, if you like. I remember in the TV show Lost, each episode would have a flashback for a different character, and it gave them spotlight. Now, the other characters were still relevant to the plot, but this was this character's story. So we're going to have a character who works in some kind of menial customer-facing job. Let's say they work in a gas station or a fast food restaurant or something like that. And while they're there working in their O'Tollies, or their Waffle Shack, Waffle Shack's the diner that shows up in all of my games, a woman staggers in. She is bloody, she is bruised, she looks like she has been dragged through hell, and she is walking with an awkward gait. One of her arms is almost pinned to her side. It looks like she's basically been in a car collision and has just staggered in here. Now, your character works here with a couple of SGC's NPCs, characters who the story guide controls, clerks-style loafers and deadbeats. And all of you see this woman because it's a quiet shift. She staggers in and she says, "Help, I've been abducted." Now, clearly, the first thing that you're going to do is try and, maybe call emergency services. You may try to offer some degree of comfort or ask her what's happened. Has she just escaped the person that's abducted her? And at that point, while the interrogation is going on, before the cops or before paramedics can arrive, she is gone. She vanishes. I don't mean she runs away. I mean she just blinks out of existence, maybe mid-sentence. Maybe she's about to drop something particularly pursuant to the plot. You know, the treasure is buried at the... But no, maybe not that. Something like, I live on Mulberry, and there we go. And she's gone. Now, it's not just you, our supernatural accursed, who sees this, who may already start having certain ideas behind what's going on, you know, attaching all kinds of ideas to supernatural things that they've encountered before. We've also got two regular Joes, regular humans who have seen this as well, and will now have to have it explained to them in some way or other what just happened. Are they hallucinating? Are they still coming off a latent high? What happened here? Or is this going to be a case where you play dumb as well and say, you know, oh, I can't explain it either, because they probably don't know that you're one of the accursed. So immediately you have drama. You have a character who has just vanished, but prior to that just said they were abducted, so there is a threat with it. You have a cover-up element. Now, Curseborne isn't a game with a masquerade that's being enforced by some vast supernatural conspiracy or something like this. This is the kind of game where if someone comes up to you and says, I was abducted by aliens, they may be telling the truth, but let's be honest, as in the real world, who is going to believe them? It doesn't matter how earnest they are when they say, I was taken aboard a UFO. Most people are just going to say, yeah, right. And you can extend that logic to seeing Sasquatches, vampires, hell, the face of God in your soup. But the case in this is you have to somehow find a way of managing these two mundane mortals and what they have just witnessed, which is a deeply traumatized, injured woman just vanishing in the blink of an eye. Maybe one of them is going to rationalize it. Maybe one of them is going to enter hysterics. Whatever the case, that's something to deal with. Now, the plot itself, how are we going to pursue that? We can't just tease an idea like this and not follow up with it. Well, this is where you would start leaning into player characters' roles rather than their accursed families and lineages. For instance, if we have a detective or someone who is a cop, maybe they could look up people who have gone missing. Maybe they could actually find out if there was a young woman who matched the description of this person who just vanished. Maybe you could look up this half an address, Mulberry, what is Mulberry? And you could find that on the other side of the city, there is a part of the city that's being gentrified. A street has been all but demolished. The demolition started about 5 years ago. Funding ran out, and right now it's just a bunch of empty lots. And that is Mulberry Avenue. There's no one who lives there anymore, but that's where she claimed to have lived. So now we've got a historic element. Now the big question. How to find out who abducted her. Let's say we can identify who she is by piecing various clues together, by digging into both technology or newspaper archives. Maybe you could go to Mulberry Avenue, find out someone who did live there and knew her. And we could find out that this is a woman who lived on the street 10 years ago, and she vanished without a trace. Her family were left in complete distress and moved away from the area about 2 years ago. They held on for as long as they could. Eventually, when the demolition started happening, they were the last holdouts to hold on to their property, and then they had to go as well. They were basically forced out by the city, and now they live someplace else. So you're in Junction City right now. They've moved over to Derry in Maine. So we have that. We can find out that this person went missing. We can do plenty of digging, real investigative stuff into who this person was, who they knew, go very Laura Palmer like this and find out, you know, who would have motive or opportunity to do something like this. But the thought is clearly going to be in the minds of the player characters that there's a supernatural agency in play. After all, she didn't just vanish in front of you. Plus, when she reappeared, it doesn't appear that she had aged a day. Is this going to be a case where she is some kind kind of phantasm, a ghost, a spectre that has come back just to warn you or to haunt the place? If so, why is she in your gas station? Maybe she went to you because you're one of the accursed and you can interact with her. Maybe you're one of the dead and therefore there's a connection there. Or perhaps it is simply maybe you're one of the outcasts and therefore you've got a better grip on what the outside is and being able to access it and manipulate it. And maybe you could save her. I mentioned earlier the blend of kitchen sink mundanity and the supernatural. I think it is always good in a plot like this to, especially if you're doing a horror game and not just purely urban fantasy, to have her come from a broken home of some kind, have some kind of traumatic event occur in her life that maybe led to her walking on the wrong side of the tracks, so to speak. Now, it's very easy to go towards some kind of abuse situation. If your players are fine with that, that often makes sense and is a pretty strong plot. Again, we're going a bit Twin Peaksy, but we don't have to. We could have any kind of thing like, I don't know, her parents are basically professional thieves. They were never around. They basically left her to fend for herself, so more of a neglect thing. And now they feel absolutely guilty because they were never there, and then she just vanishes. And they are convinced she ran away. They don't even think she was abducted, but they blame themselves for that. Perhaps rather than them being abusers or neglectful, maybe it is the case that it wasn't in the family. Maybe it was one of her friends. She witnessed something traumatic. Maybe she witnessed something supernatural. Or hell, maybe she was coming to terms with the fact that she was accursed, and this sent her in a complete spin. This is where you can get really interesting into the sort of guts of the plot and the character that you're pursuing, but we still don't know who took her away. I think having that balancing act of thinking maybe she did just run, and maybe she then got caught in a liminality, in an interstitial zone or something like that, and has only just been able to work her way out, and then something dragged her back in. Alternatively, you can present that as the most likely outcome, and then have it be that there is a supernatural serial killer, a Resurrection Jake style character, that's one of our adversaries in the book, who just found her and decided, I'm going to play with this one, I'm going to take her and I'm going to kill her, or I'm going to keep her as my pet for as long as I, well, remain entertained by her. And so for all the unveiled crimes and abuses and horrors that this young woman went through in her real life, she was arbitrarily picked. Maybe she was easier to pick out because she had no defense mechanisms, because there was no one around to basically look after her or to ask after her until, let's say, a week after her disappearance. So there's tragedy that you can build in there. But the fact is that she was just taken. Now, you can extend this, of course, this plot, which I have to confess, because this is all spitballing, it's all off the top of my head, doesn't necessarily have a coherent or any kind of linear through line, is going to be, well, how do we get her back? Now, I suggest that if your characters are brand new to being accursed, and I think most of you are going to be playing Entanglement 1 characters, because it's the best way to learn the game, you may not have the power or the resources or the pull. This is where you can start reaching out to your families and more broadly your lineages, the mentors, the people that you look up to who have taught you a little about what it is to be accursed, and you can present them with this case. Maybe this is where you find out that there's a cover-up, you know, oh yes, well, you know, there was that young woman, we believe she was one of the Sphinx, but she just upped and vanished, and the Sphinx were down one cursed. Well, there's always another cat lurking in an alley somewhere, brushing aside, you know. cover up, or maybe your family is only too happy to sponsor you and guide you because they want to see what kind of results you come up with. Maybe it will create some kind of political intrigue if it turns out that this particular young woman was an accursed, and if you can bring her back, another family is going to owe you a big favor. Maybe she's your cousin, you know? Anyway, you get into the political side, you get some answers, and it is through their help that you find a route through to the outside, through to this liminality where you can track her down. Now, again, you can make things as grisly as you like here. Maybe this is a storage warehouse of 100 abducted young women that no one ever noticed until many, many weeks or months or years after they vanished. Maybe you want to make this something a little more changeling-like, and it is like some eternal mystical forest where, providing they remain in ignorance out there, they are, these abducted young women, these forever lost girls, are blithely fine with the fact that they've given up their lives. But when they start to twig that there is no way out from this Eden, that's when Resurrection Jake, to use an example from the book, starts applying the screws, starts making the thorns snatch at the skin and provide the scratches, the gores, the breaking of the bones. And maybe his reach is really quite long. He doesn't like to lose his toys even when he grows bored of them. And this then takes our characters to a more supernatural dimension, if we want to go this way, of course. All the way up until now, you've been dealing largely with mortals, occasionally with other accursed to find out information. We obviously need the occasional threat as well. And I think building threats into that path, you don't want to combat every single session, more likely than not. But it's good to have some kind of physical encounter every now and then. And to go back to our destroyed, demolished street, maybe there is something that lurks there that will be a red herring. You know, you're going to encounter some kind of zombie or phantasm or lurking beast. And your immediate instinct is going to be, well, this got her, but then it will transpire that this is just a mindless creature that happened to be there. You know, it's good to build those kinds of threats in, but you don't need to linger on them. And now, of course, they're in an alien world, moving ahead a couple of sessions, and they are having to defend themselves against powers that are probably exceeding their own. They're going to have to deal with things not just physically, but also through reason and logic and riddle and negotiation. If we go back to our storage warehouse of missing young women, well, maybe you know they're here. Maybe every single storage locker has a padlock on it, and maybe every single padlock can be unlocked, but you don't know the combination. So where do you get that combination from? We can tie this entire storage locker thing back. Maybe the last place she was seen was in the the discount storage warehouse on her side of town. And maybe that's where a lot of these young women went missing. Maybe this is basically a mirror version of that space. But ultimately, we need to decide, is this going to be the kind of game where you have a confrontation with the abductor? Maybe it's going to seem eerily easy to get her back, or maybe it is impossible to actually rescue her in any kind of state, and you basically need to give her the choice. You can pass on to whatever your great reward is, or you can remain here, because when we pull you back to the world, you will only arrive as a corpse. The thing you sent us was a projection. It was not an actual body, and you have been dead, effectively, for the last decade. This is a plot off the top of my shiny head, and I like to work my way through these stories, these ideas, whenever I am working on a game, whenever I'm running a game. I like to see the twists and turns I can just come up with spontaneously. See what sticks, see what doesn't. And of course, the main trick of running any kind of game is to be reactive to your players. This one situates one player character in the spotlight at the beginning because this is the character who first encountered her. For some reason, she reached out to this character. And that provides investment. The next story we run, we could focus on a different character. But this can provide some real character growth. Maybe they refuse to give up the idea that she can't be saved. Maybe because they were chosen to save her, they will find a way of doing it. And hell, if the player is committed to that, if the player doesn't want a tragedy where they're basically left with ash in their hands, maybe give them what they want. Maybe this young woman can be saved. And then there's going to be the unexplained incident of why has she not aged in the last 10 years when she finally reveals herself to the world again. Anyway, so this has been a Curseborne story spooled off from my brain that involves an abduction, a character focus, dealing with mundanes having to witness the supernatural for the first time. There will be combat, there will be investigation, there will be familial politics, there will be, well, liminality, therefore overt supernaturalism, and there will be a choice that you have to make, a moral choice that is always, to my mind, a much better way of ending a story than with a big boss fight. Your mileage may vary. I often find a choice is more important, more memorable than whittling something's injuries or hit points down to 0. Anyway, that is the Curseborne plot I've come up with today. I hope that it has been inspirational or has given you some ideas. I would love for you to comment below what you would add to a story like this, what you would take away. What do you think you could do to make this plot more well-rounded? Bear in mind, you know, this is something I've just come up with on the fly. Have some time to think about it, and tell me the kind of stories you want to run in Curseborne. I think that is what I would really love to hear. There's so many of you who have sounded really enthusiastic about the direction Curseborne is going in. People who have been fans of the World of Darkness and Chronicles of Darkness, of Supernatural, of shows like Twin Peaks, of The X-Files, of Fringe, the various Mike Flanagan shows, the Stephen King novels. There's so many ways we can go with this, and I would love to hear your thoughts. So, please comment below. Thank you very much for watching, and back the Kickstarter.